You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Networks Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for October 29th, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where it's been a minute since we did any straight-up no-fair remembering stuff. So here's a little blast from the past.
Hey, that's a neat rifle. Let me see it.
Can't. All the firearms are locked up.
Locked up?
Yeah, and all the ammunition's locked away. And Dad says no one touches those firearms unless he's here.
Well, that's dumb.
It is not. The only thing dumb about firearm safety is people who don't play it safe.
Yeah, who said?
My dad and the National Rifle Association.
It's the Professional Left podcast with Driftglass and Blue Gal, and that was a CBS public service announcement from November of 1976.
That was 12 presidential elections ago. A different world. We hope you're doing okay, Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
This was post-Nixon and soon to be post-Gerald Ford, but pre-Reagan, pre-Falwell, pre-Gingrich, pre-Limbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are with precious few days before this incredibly consequential election. I know lots of people are stressed out about it, but we assume that all of you good people are doing all that you can productively to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And yeah, we're all still a little bit anxious about the future, but let's all heed the wisdom of Officer Jimmy Malone.
Take it easy. It'll all happen in time. This is the job. Don't wait for it to happen. Don't even want it to happen. Just watch what does happen. Did you check it already?
Yes, I did.
Then leave it alone.
Did you check the polls already? And Facebook? Then leave them alone.
Leave them alone.
Also, this is our last episode before Driftglass's birthday.
Yep.
I will still need him. He will still feed me because he's 64.
Yep. Tomorrow, baby.
The 30th.
Medicare -1. Socialism. Pooh. Wow.
Yeah, yay. And you're doing a birthday fundraiser over at driftglass.blogspot.com. Is that correct?
I'm trying, but, people are highly focused on
absolutely
the election coming here. So any pennies you want to toss in my tip jar are always appreciated, and we can certainly use them. But we understand that this is coming up as the important week. And it's everyone's focused on one thing. And one thing I know by turning 64 tomorrow is the future does arrive. Yes, it does. Oh, my good. You can be in your 20s going, that'll never be. Oh, it's me. And now I have no hair. The future gets here before you know it. And since no one can predict the future, but everybody wants to know what the future will bring. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen. The very best you can do is examine the present and see what we can see. So that's what we do here. We examine right now, what's going on right now, and see what we can find out. And here's what I know. A political campaign, especially a very long political campaign, is a process of refinement. It's distilling things. It's week after week, messages get distilled and sharpened until they are as clear as it is possible to make them. And this doesn't just apply to candidates and campaigns. It's also true of people who cover politics, pundits and critics, and even voters. You will have noticed that the stupid get stupider, the angry get angrier, and the determined, which I hope you all are, get more determined.
Mm-hmm. Now, we are recording this before Kamala Harris's speech at the Ellipse tonight on Tuesday. But I guarantee you, it will have been honed to razor sharpness. She has a very good staff. Mm-hmm. And this will be a different speech from Michelle Obama's barn burner in Kalamazoo, Michigan yesterday. But like music, it'll be using the same chord changes and progressions. The speeches will be complimentary, all of a piece, part policy, part church, part direct address to specific groups of voters. And it will begin with thanks and praise and joy. It will establish a major theme and variations. It will return to that theme again and again and end on that theme.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we do not have Kamala Harris's speech right in front of us, but we do know what Michelle Obama said yesterday.
Yes, we do. Great.
So let's talk about what that amazing speech accomplished. The headline from USA Today read, quote, Michelle Obama blasts Trump at Harris's Michigan campaign rally. No honesty, no decency. But that barely tells the story.
Yep.
Michelle Obama talked about how Donald Trump hurts women.
Yeah. And he addressed, and she addressed that to men.
She did. She addressed that directly to men.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about three women who have been, two of whom have been in the news this week and on social media feeds, and one of whom has not. This week, I retweeted the stand-up routine from Amy Schumer, where she talks about the tremendous complications she has had with her reproductive health. Mm-hmm. And she has a condition, the Queen Mother, the princess in England has the same problem where while you're pregnant, you're just incredibly sick and dehydrated and vomiting, and it's horrible. The entire pregnancy. It's not morning sickness. It's far worse than that. Mm-hmm. And in her stand-up routine, Amy Schumer says they found out what it was about 6 months in. And I said, great, they have a name for it. What do we do? How do we fix it? Well, no one studied it because it only happens to women.
Right.
And the punchline is, but if your husband wants a chewable Viagra, we have that. Because sometimes it's hard to take a pill.
I don't want to take a... Do you have Flintstones?
I want to get hard, but I don't want to take a pill. Well, we'll fix that. We'll do all kinds of research to make sure you can chew that gummy. Mm-hmm. Blue Chews, you know, with the sexy girls on the commercial on television. All right. So as I tweeted that video out, I said, this is what this election is about. The inequity between men and women in terms of just medical care.
And civil rights.
And civil rights and right to your body. Yes. Mm-hmm. But just being able to understand what is happening in pregnancy. The reason that Dodd's passed with a bunch of Supreme Court 14th century Catholics on the court, they don't give a shit about women's health. And they don't know how women's bodies work and how pregnancy happens and all the complications that can happen. Okay. The second woman I want to talk about is Debbie Reynolds. And many of you may have seen this on social media. She was talking in an interview with Joan Rivers back when Joan Rivers was hosting The Tonight Show, that little era, about a pregnancy that she had after her daughter, Carrie Fisher, and her son were born. She had a third pregnancy. And while she was pregnant, the baby died inside her womb. And this was the 1960s. And they knew there was no cardio. They knew no heartbeat, no brain, no nothing. The baby that she wanted to have, the third pregnancy, that baby is dead inside of her. And she had to carry it to term because there was no option to do anything else. It was illegal to remove that fetus, that dead fetus, from her body. And this is what they're talking about when they talk about walking coffins, making women into walking coffins. Debbie Reynolds was a walking coffin. And there she is. And if she bumps into someone and they say, oh, how are you? How's the baby? Have you named it yet? Have you bought a crib? And she has to endure that pain. And the third person I want to talk about is a woman who died 8 years ago this week. Mm-hmm. And that is my mom. The joke in my family is that my mom died 2 days before Trump was elected. And thank God she did, because Trump's election would have killed her. Mm-hmm. But her fourth pregnancy was anecephalic. That means no brain. And this infant had a brain stem that kept a heart beating, which, as I've mentioned on this podcast before, is why I get so angry when I see those bumper stickers, abortion stops a beating heart, because my sister's heart was beating. But she was blind, deaf, couldn't feel her own skin, couldn't swallow, had no cerebellum. It did not develop. And so this child, who was a wanted child, was terminal at birth. And this is what, when they talk about abortion after birth, and the governor of North Carolina, who was a physician, who talked about we make the baby comfortable so that it can die. That's the kind of pregnancy he's talking about. Mm-hmm. My sister's heart continued to beat for several hours after birth, but there was no way to help this child survive. This wasn't a neonatal situation. It was a full-term birth. This child at a Catholic hospital, born at a Catholic hospital, was declared terminal at birth and died within hours.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the situations that real women dealt with before Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is the compromise. I've said that many times on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Roe v. Wade says it is not the government's business for the first trimester what the woman does with her body. And after that, it is based on viability.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was not a viable pregnancy. Debbie Reynolds' deceased infant in her womb was not viable. And so that's what this election is about. It is about women's civil rights, the right to make determinations about their medical decisions and their bodies and their pregnancies. And you got to vote. And I assume everyone is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and turning that trauma into Democrats murder babies is so fucking obscene.
Yep.
Is so, and when they know better, when, frankly, Liz Cheney knew better, she just didn't care because it was a viable political weapon to be used against Democrats who, up until 5 minutes ago, were the face of pure evil as far as she was concerned.
Well, I think for a lot of Republicans, it was a fundraiser. It wasn't a political
it was
decision.
money.
It was a fundraising decision. And,
Absolutely.
And Kathleen Parker wrote, "Calm down, everybody. Nothing's going to happen to
Don't
Roe."
worry. Yeah, just like Ross Douthat wrote, "Don't worry, no Trump coup. That's crazy talk by a bunch of crazy liberals."
Mm-hmm.
And all these people still have jobs, which is just hilarious.
Right.
And I watched Michelle Obama's whole speech, and she was really explicit and clear when she talked about women's bodies. Women's bodies are a complicated business, and how women, puberty to menopause, there's a lot going on there that men don't understand at all. Basically, leave it to us and God and our doctors, for God's sakes. And if you vote for Donald Trump, you're voting to hurt us. You're voting to hurt the women you love. Do you want to be the man standing by the graveside with flowers in your hand because your wife could not get the medical care she needed because of Donald fucking Trump? That was a part of the speech and powerful. The USA Today article actually cut straight to the section where she talked about things that as a candidate, especially as a black woman candidate, Kamala Harris cannot say, despite the fact that they are absolutely true, undeniably true. So this is back to the USA Today article. Quote, Michelle Obama did not mince words. The former First Lady hit the campaign trail on Saturday, opening for Vice President Kamala Harris in Kalamazoo on the first day of early voting in Michigan, where Democrats' presidential candidate deadlocked with Trump. During the appearance, Obama warned about a second Trump term. I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn, Mrs. Obama said. We expect her to be intelligent and articulate, to have a clear set of policies, to never show too much anger, to prove time and time again that she belongs. But for Trump, we expect nothing at all. No understanding of policy, no ability to put together a coherent sentence, no honesty, no decency, no morals. Obama's pithy remarks in support of Harris were the most forceful of any Democratic figure, including her husband, unquote. And that's the heart of it. That's the center of it. It isn't even fair to say that Harris and Trump are not being held to the same standard, since Trump is being held to no standard at all.
That's right.
And the trick is, Trump understood how bigoted and brainwashed the Republican base was before he was ever elected, even before he was nominated. All the way back in January of 2016 at Dort College, a private evangelical Christian university in Sioux Center, Iowa. This is what he said, and you've heard it 1,000 times before. Quote, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters. Okay? Unquote. Because while the legacy media and elite conservatives had spent the last 40 years lying to themselves and lying to the rest of the world, that the Republican-based voters were savvy small government heroes who spent their days reading the National Review and quoting Edmund Burke to one another, Trump immediately sized them up as a mob of chumps and losers that they were, because Trump had built an entire empire out of scamming, chumps and losers. He can smell them. He knew what they wanted to hear because he listened to what they were actually listening to and watched what they were actually watching and did nothing more than talk to the base in their own language, the language of bigotry and grievance and paranoia. And you know what? It worked.
He's saying what I'm thinking.
He's saying what I'm thinking. Oh my God, it's like me. It's like the voice in my head. Yeah, that's the problem. And the thing is, it's still working. And once the legacy media figured out that the Republican base actively hated them, wouldn't mind seeing them rounded up and executed, and had no intention of even pretending to care about standards of behavior anymore, they didn't know what to do. They had long since refined their both-siderism into a virtual cult. So what were they going to do when faced with the fact that the base of the Republican Party really is this awful and really has been this awful for a very, very long time?
I know the answer to that one, Driftglass. They just ignored it.
Just ignored it.
Yeah, just like they ignored that the Tea Party was all Republicans, because their both-siderist cult does not allow for asymmetry between the parties. It just amped up the imaginary sins of imaginary liberals and wrote long, sad columns about the extremes on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as Republicans reacted by pushing further and further into madness, the legacy media kept hauling in the opinions of third-rate hacks, plural. We're not just talking about one hack here.
No.
Willing to say, but the Democrats, on page and on camera. Now, you can see this in the LA Times billionaire owner, Patrick Soon-Shiong, pulling that paper's endorsement of Kamala Harris just days before the election. You can see it in the Washington Post billionaire owner, Jeff Bezos, quashing that paper's endorsement of Kamala Harris just days before the election. As of this writing, according to Variety magazine, more than 200,000 people have canceled their subscription to the Washington Post, including us. If you were wondering about the endorsement policy of our local Republican rag, they abandoned their tradition of endorsing candidates 4 years ago. You know, when Biden beat Trump, because of, polarization and such.
Mm-hmm.
Back when they went from being our local Republican rag to the gatehouse media gutted corpse of a Republican rag. They wrote, quote, "There are few community recognition programs with the esteem of the first citizen. We are proud to continue that tradition. And as we celebrate the kickoff of one tradition, we are ending another." I mean, they're giving one old guy an award, a plaque that says you're the first citizen for 2023 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's so dumb. But that's how they framed this. We're going to begin this new tradition of giving an old guy a plaque, and we're going to end another, which is the SJR will not endorse any candidates for office. The decision was not made lightly. Oh, yes, it was.
Oh, yeah.
Political endorsements have been a tradition of many news organizations. However, they are a holdover of days past. And I am not convinced that any endorsement we made would influence you to vote for a particular candidate. In 2008, when the country was not nearly as polarized as it is today.
Yeah. Have you been to 2008? Have you visited 2008? Do you remember 2008? Of course they don't.
The State Journal Register is not alone in its decision to move away from endorsements. News organizations across the country have made similar choices. The Dallas Morning News announced earlier this year that they would not endorse a candidate for president. The Peoria Journal-Star and the Indy Star are among those who also will not make endorsements for this election. While our approach is changing, it fits today's political climate.
Yeah, if you want to not be singled out as cowards and quislings, hang out with other cowards and quislings.
Yeah.
It's not just me. All these other gutless fools are doing the same thing, so don't blame me. But we'd have to say that the distillation of both-siderism into its purest form might have reached its peak with the New York Times conservative op-ed writer named, wait for it, Ross Douthat. Now, you thought I was going to say David Brooks, didn't you? You thought I was going to say David Brooks, because I would say David. Nope, not this time. This time, the belt goes to Ross Douthat and to our never-Trumper allies who thought, you know what, platforming Douthat's bullshit less than 2 weeks before the election was a great idea. a terrific idea. And yes, this is the same Ross Douthat, who I spoke of earlier, who confidently predicted in October of 2020, that's just 4 years ago, people, quote, there will be no Trump coup, unquote. And he still has a job. This time around, Ross is arguing that since liberals have gone insane in the past 4 years, 5 years.
Wait a minute.
Yep. That's just a fact of history, Blue Gal.
That's just facts.
That requires no evidentiary support. It's just a fact that everyone knows. Liberals have gone nuts in the past 5 years. He cannot, in good conscience, endorse Kamala Harris. In support of this thesis, and I did listen, this was all on our Never Trump Allies podcast. In support of this thesis, he cites wildly goofy bullshit like, crazy liberals are responsible for things like the increased traffic deaths due to COVID. So, he just can't get on board with Kamala Harris. How he comes to that conclusion? Well, during COVID, people got more reckless and the barriers to their behavior were off because liberals all went crazy. That's why you had so many more traffic deaths during COVID. And so I can't support her and a bunch of other crap of that caliber. Now, this is someone who's clearly left the bottom of the barrel far behind, and he's now scraping at the earth's mantle for excuses to keep his true conservative skirts clean and hold himself aloof from making the only and obvious choice. And it's also clear to me that we have a case here of what I call high school debater asshole syndrome. You see, in high school and in college debate, each year's topic is selected and worded to provide maximum latitude for interpretation. That's the point. For example, when I was in high school, one of the topics was resolve the United States criminal justice system should be reformed. I think substantially reformed, actually, was the term. Now, what does that mean? Well, the point is it can legitimately mean anything from bail reform to plea bargaining to prison overcrowding to legalizing pot, right? So suppose you're a high school debater and your affirmative case, the case you make every week, and you're prepared to make when you walk into the room, is that marijuana should be legalized or at least, decriminalized. Yes, kids, I was a high school debater when you bought weed of varying quality, I must say, from a guy named Ray Ray, who sold out of his glove compartment of his Camaro, and you cleaned it with your school ID and whichever album cover you had nearest at hand. Not like today when you can get excellent weed or edibles or tinctures from clean, well-lighted dispensaries that pay enough in taxes to repair the roads. And you know what? J.B. Pritzker could not be prouder.
Governor Pritzker could not be prouder.
Anyway, high school debater. You walk into a classroom, it's a cold Saturday morning, like 7:30, and you just, and you passionately make the case that pot should be legal, right? Yay, right. You're a hero. And then the round comes to an end, and you shake the hands of the other team, and you go to the next round. And, of course, the next round, you have to be on the negative side of whatever case is being presented. You must argue against whatever case the other team whips out, and lo and behold, their case is also a case for making marijuana legal. So what do? You just argued passionately that it should be legal. Now you have to argue against that. But the whole debate experience is intended to teach you to think logically and to marshal the best argument you can with the available evidence and be prepared to think on your feet. And sometime around junior year, when you start to coach the novices, one has been known to catch a case of high school debater asshole syndrome. I know it because it happened to me. Just to show off how awesome I was, I would take the contrary position on almost anything, even when it was stupid and wrong, and I didn't believe a goddamn word of it. Now, I have no way of knowing what Ross Douthat really believes, but I truly believe the reason he and David Brooks and Brett Stevens remain on the New York Times payroll is their willingness to take patently ludicrous positions in support of some non-existent elite true conservatism just so A.G. Schulzberger can claim that the New York Times coverage is balanced.
Do you think, though, that this is all out in the open? Because I don't. I think there's a whole lot of gentleman's agreement that we never discuss it at that level.
Oh, absolutely. No,
I'm not a contrarian. I'm a true conservative. And right. A.G. Schulzberger nods his head. Yes, you are. That's why I hired you.
That's why
you're a true conservative.
That's why there's a Times policy that you don't attack your colleagues.
Right.
That's why whenever anybody wants to say something about the New York Times, working for the New York Times, especially when they want to go defend some bullshit decision they made, they go over the Washington Post.
Right.
And they say it there. There's this weird in the club. There's a club, right?
Oh, sure.
And everyone's in the club, and everyone agrees not to talk shit about anybody else in the club. And that's how the club survives.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to come to Donald Trump's fascist rally at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. And we both liked how Mark Fulman at Mother Jones reported on it. Quote, forget about October's surprise. Instead, maybe call it the October reveal. Trump's hate fest at Madison Square Garden has put the whole thing on grand, hideous display. Perhaps a nail in the coffin of his campaign. We'll see, unquote. In addition to referring to Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage, speakers called Kamala Harris the devil, likened Harris to a prostitute with pimp handlers, and made jokes that Latinos love making babies. There's no pulling out. They come inside just like they do to our country. Other speakers referred to Harris as the Antichrist, and another called her husband, Doug Emhoff, a crappy Jew. Mm-hmm. And Stephen Miller declared that America is for Americans and Americans only. Never mind, don't talk to me about my grandparents. Another speaker referred to Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, as potentially the next O.J. Simpson. When Trump took the stage, he announced that the Republican Party has really become the party of inclusion, before telling the crowd that the U.S. is now an occupied country and accusing Democrats of being the enemy from within.
It was just horrible. This is from Reverend Benjamin Kremer on social media. Reverend Kremer's bio reads that he is a pastor, a Wesleyan, a writer, has a BA in religion, an MA in spiritual formation, and an MA in theological studies. You know, he's got credentials like my wife does. Quote, to arrive at the point where the blatant dehumanization of people isn't even noticed means in many ways we have become dehumanized ourselves. Lord, help us, unquote. And amen, Reverend. Amen.
What happened at the garden on Sunday was the best distillation yet of the phenomenon longtime listeners will recognize as the tribe that rubs shit in their hair. Mm-hmm. This is a term Driftglass coined long before Donald Trump came down the golden escalator, and I expect it to get picked up and be as popular as dumpster fire.
I hope so, because it's very applicable, and it was the culmination of about 12 years of writing. Yeah. This is me quoting me. You'll pardon the arrogance of doing this.
Driftglass, would you read your column from April of 2014 and then tell me what you think about it?
I'd be happy to, Blue Gal. I feel like I'm on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. This is me from April 2014. Quote, longtime readers know that the tribe that rubs shit in their hair is my shorthand for inbred conservative meat sticks who have wallowed in the wingnut hate radio racist dung and Fox News liberal conspiracy claptrap for so long that it's become the quotidian argot of their wretched lives. It is their tavern talk. Their worst paranoid delusions externalized, validated, tarted up as the unvarnished truth, and then regurgitated back to them by ghouls and treasonmongers like Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly. Remember Bill O'Reilly? Which are in turn passed around like so many fish stories, getting bigger and wilder and truthier with each iteration. It is the shit they eagerly rub in their hair. The shit which, year after year, they sculpt into ever more elaborate pompadours because everyone else in their dingy, lightless corner of the universe is doing it, and they lost their sense of smell 40 fucking years ago. They preen over each other. They praise each other. They're happy in each other's company. They praise each other's on the little individual touches which they've customized their shit heap toupees. An extra layer of Benghazi, perhaps, appliqued over something new Black Panther Party because of Acorn. And all's right with the world, right up until they leave the cocoon of their wingnut pigsty and step into their normal world, where they are shocked that ordinary people flee from them in horror, unquote. I go on at much, much greater length, but, reading the entire post is exhausting. And this is exactly what Trump delivered on Sunday.
Yeah.
A cave where all of the fascists could gather and get their fascism on, to holler and laugh at all the racism pouring off the stage, to hoot and cheer as Byron Donalds obediently did his best step and fetch it while the band played Dixie.
Yep. And this is from the Mary Sue. Quote, We carved watermelons together. Black people are targeted by racist joke at Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Now, the kicker is in other videos from the Madison Square Garden rally, including one that reveled in an incredibly pointed moment of racist symbolism. Dixie, the Confederate anthem that originated in 1850s blackface minstrel shows as an ode to plantation life, played before Donald took the stage. To play this slavery-era song before the only black Republican congressman's speech was a choice, to say the least. Teamed with Hinchcliffe's joke, the purposeful embarrassment of Donald's appears clear with intentional punctuation, unquote. Now, before you go on, Driftglass, you asked a question about Remember Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that Chris Cuomo is holding an election special with Bill O'Reilly, RFK Jr., and Mark Cuban with limited commercial interruption, Driftglass.
Mm-hmm.
That's like Dante's Fifth Circle of Hell. I mean, Mark Cuban's doing a lot of good for Kamala Harris. I understand that. But
Mark Cuban
why is he sitting down with RFK Jr. and Bill O'Reilly and Chris Cuomo?
Because he's a billionaire. And none of this is going to actually bring him, anything, affect him materially. But, I do wish, I wish a lot of things. And I can't say them right now, but let's just say I wish a lot of things. And when the mob came back out into the daylight, they discovered that normal people were horrified by them. It was so bad. How bad was it, Blue Gal? It was so bad.
How bad was it, Driftglass?
Oh, well, let me tell you. It was so bad, even the legacy media noticed.
Oh, my God.
I know this is from Politico. Quote, Trump allies bemoan Madison Square Garden rally racist and vulgar comments. Unquote.
The Associated Press, quote, Trump's Madison Square Garden event features crude and racist insults.
Oh,
unquote.
my God. And this is from the New York fucking Times. Believe it or not. Quote, a new insult reminds Puerto Ricans of how Trump treated them. Way to go, Donald. Keep talking, asshole. As President Donald Trump fought bitterly with Puerto Rican officials, ridiculed them, and resisted sending aid to the territory after devastating hurricanes. Carmen Yulín Cruz's cell phone started buzzing on Sunday when she was at the airport in Connecticut, waiting for a flight to Puerto Rico. A stand-up comic at former President Donald J. Trump's rally in New York had called Puerto Rico a, quote, floating island of garbage. As video clips of the comic Tony Hinchcliffe began flashing on airport televisions, fellow Puerto Ricans preparing to board their flight began erupting, Ms. Cruz said. People were asking me, Mira, Yulín, what is this guy saying? Only in more colorful language, as one might imagine. Ms. Cruz, the former mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico's capital, said on Monday, and I said, well, this isn't the first time. Let's not be surprised, unquote.
From MSNBC, quote, the spirit of George Wallace was all over Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. In 1968, a racist populist presidential candidate held a hate-filled rally at Madison Square Garden. It sounded a lot like Trump's, unquote.
And this from the Daily Beast via MSNBC via the Daily Beast was passed along to me, and I could write an entire dissertation just on this headline. Quote, Morning Joe after MSG rally. How did we get here? Unquote. Oh, Joe.
Listen, that's the word that jumps out at me right there.
Yeah. How
what
did
do you
this
mean
happen?
We, Morning Joe?
How did this happen?
Now,
Calling me.
We, by the way, Driftglass, the New York fucking Times says that we, as chat podcasters, should have chemistry.
I'm trying, Blue
So
Gal.
maybe we can work on that in the next 15 years of the podcast.
Does chemistry include bourbon?
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we here at the Professional Left Podcast are old enough to remember when it became public that Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski had debated the location of their wedding venue. Mm-hmm. Should it be the Trump White House or Mar-a-Lago?
We?
Uh-huh. How did we get here? If you haven't heard the first episode we did in 2023, episode 683, it is all about Joe Scarborough. Yeah. It's no fair remembering Joe Scarborough.
Very
And
cruel.
I recommend you go listen to it.
Donald Trump might call it nasty and unfair because, we're remembering stuff. And finally, from brother Charlie Pierce over at Esquire magazine. And so again, it's a long post, wonderful writer. I'm just going to do 2 paragraphs. Quote, the former president's speech was hate radio on scan. By the way, I love that idea.
It is so true.
It's just scanning through the channels and just randomly going back and forth. He would stick to the teleprompter that he otherwise denied he was using and then go off on familiar flights of fancy. It was mendacity surrendered to foul, endless cliche, embedding in our politics for the foreseeable future. It was, in fact, not the banality of evil, but rather the evil of banality. Well done, Charlie. Nice turn of phrase. The lesser of 2 evils is still evil. What brought me up short, however, was the interchange between the former president and Speaker Moses about their little secret. This was new. This was startling. This was a moment of authentic danger. It drew some laughs from the crowd, but it was a deeper threat than anything Fritz Kuhn threw out to his slavering crowd. For all their imperial dumb show, the Nazis of 1939 were not the threat to the mechanisms of democracy that this one little passage in the former president's speech was. The wink and a nod towards the ultimate in rat fucking was more chilling than all the Sieg Heils that drove Isidor Greenbaum towards the stage. Nazi goons be damned. Fritz Kuhn had all the set decoration, but the former president, surrounded by laughable grotesques of dictatorship, had the script already been written, and everybody knows their part, unquote. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the one that should just make you want to run out and vote. God damn it. The kicker is from Mike Johnson and Mitch McConnell, who ignored all of Trump's comments referring to Kamala Harris as a fascist and a Marxist and a communist and comrade, and then asked Kamala Harris to, quote, stop escalating the threat environment, unquote. After she agreed that, yeah, Trump is a fascist. We're all on board with that. The top 2 Republicans accused Harris of fanning, quote, the flames beneath a boiling cauldron of political animus, unquote, and said her words, quote, seemed to dare it to boil over, unquote. Blue Gal.
Yeah.
Why won't Kamala lead?
Why won't Kamala lead? We're already there.
Why won't she take responsibility for ending Republican intransigence by just
Mitch
sheer force of will?
Mitch McConnell was there on January 6th.
Mitch McConnell called it an impeachable offense. Mitch McConnell on tape said, don't worry, our Democratic friends will take care of this son of a bitch for us.
Yep.
Mitch McConnell is just pure fucking evil down to his shoe tops. Mm-hmm. And Mike Johnson aspires to be that evil with the help of Republican Jesus, of course.
Mitch McConnell's stepping down,
Yeah. Okay.
He says. All right. Hey, Driftglass, we got to do a news roundup.
Cool.
The Archbishop of Puerto Rico formally rebuked Donald Trump, demanded that he personally apologize. It is not sufficient for your campaign to apologize. It is important that you personally apologize for these comments. I hope that the Archbishop of Puerto Rico isn't holding his breath for that one.
Oh, and speaking of archbishops, we can recommend Conclave, can't we, Blue Gal?
Yes, Conclave is a good movie.
Yes.
That's all we're going to tell you about it. Go see it.
Good cast, good movie, intrigue, everything you want. And you know what? I'm not going to give anything away by saying it takes faith seriously.
Yep.
It doesn't make a joke of it. And
you've probably seen the commercials. You know that Isabella Rossellini is an old nun.
Yeah.
And she rocks in this movie.
John Lithgow, Stanley Tucci, and Ray Fiennes. Yeah, Voldemort himself is in this movie.
Yeah. It's great cast. Great cast.
Great cast. The Philadelphia District Attorney sued Elon Musk to stop his $1 million daily giveaways to Pennsylvania voters, calling it an illegal lottery scheme.
Donald Trump continues to lie about Hurricane Helene. They haven't even responded in North Carolina. There's nobody. That's all I'm going to read of it. We have a quote from him. I'm done.
He's just the worst. And I was just on the radio with Nicole Sandler, and she can barely watch the news anymore. This guy's voice makes me so fucking sick. Yeah, he's such a and it's again. I think we mentioned this on a podcast earlier. When I look at him, I don't see him anymore. I see the millions and millions and millions of brainwashed, racist assholes that make him possible. And
same with Hannity. It's actually the same with Hannity. I see his face and I just see all the people that he has shit in their skulls, and they call it thought, as you put it. Yeah.
And won't change no matter what. Will never change.
Yeah.
Trump went on an unhinged rant about Michelle Obama and made it clear that he will seek retribution. She was nasty to me. That was a big mistake that she made. That's a threat. It's a pretty clear threat. And I hope people take it seriously.
And yet, Donald McDonald can't remember who the president is, Driftglass.
Brian, it's all coming through Iran, and Obama he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't even mention them in his statements. It's all coming through Iran.
Well, you mean President Biden. So
now this ridiculous headline in the Washington Post sums up everything about the legacy media that needs to be excised. Quote, Harris adopts Trump's playbook as she targets his age and competence. The Democratic nominee is echoing some of the attacks her opponent directed at Biden as she questions the former president's stamina and fitness to be commander-in-chief, unquote. No. This was not the Trump playbook. This was the legacy media's playbook. This was specifically the New York fucking Times playbook, which published all of these headlines in 2024, February 12th. Biden's age as a major campaign issue.
February 13th, why the age issue is hurting Biden so much more than Trump.
March 4th, a poll reflecting worries about Biden's age.
March 8th, for Joe Biden, what seems like age might instead be style.
June 21st, Biden battles age doubts and a trail of misleading videos.
July 1st, Biden's age is the problem in plain sight for Democrats.
July 23rd, the White House brushed off questions about Biden's age.
And the New York Times Joe Kahn in the Washington Post, July 8th, it's not for us to solve the problem of Biden's age.
Yeah. Journalist Jennifer Schultz observed that as of the morning of July 5th, the New York Times had published nearly 200 pieces on Biden's debate performance, comprising 142 news articles and 50 opinion pieces. In comparison, excuse me, pop.
43-35.
In comparison, the historian Heather Cox Richardson wrote that Trump was covered in only 92 stories altogether during the same period.
Yale history professor and On Tyranny author Timothy Snyder reacted to the developments at the Post and LA Times in a YouTube video. Billionaire newspaper moguls Jeff Bezos and Patrick Soon-Shiong are, quote, ignoring the essential thing that we were supposed to have learned from the 20th century, which is, in circumstances like these, do not obey in advance, he said. By currying favor or trying to stay off an imagined enemies list, you are making it more likely that the authoritarian will come to power. And since you have already made concessions before he came to power, you're preparing yourself for making more concessions after he comes to power. What happened this week is we learned that this experiment where billionaires simply own our news media as a hobby is a massive fail.
Yeah. Billionaires and hedge fund managers and corporations who want to gut them. From the Columbia Journalism Review, Mariel Garza, the editorials editor of the Los Angeles Times, resigned on Wednesday after the paper's owner blocked the editorial board's plans to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris for president. I'm resigning because I want to make it clear that I'm not okay with us being silent, Garza told me in a telephone conversation. In dangerous times, honest people need to stand up. This is how I'm standing up. On October 11th, Patrick Soon-Shiong, who bought the newspaper for $500 million in 2018, informed the paper's editorial board that the Times would not be making an endorsement for president. The message was conveyed to Garza by Terry Tang, the paper's editor. The board had intended to endorse Harris, Garza told me, and she had drafted the outline of a proposed editorial. She'd hoped to get feedback on the outline and was taken aback upon being told that the newspaper would not take a position.
One of the most pathetic takeaways from the Kamala Harris town hall was a post-event debrief with 5 of the attendees. The attendees all nodded as undecided voter Pam Thistle urged Harris and Trump to stop trashing each other, adding, "We don't want to hear it." She was also super interested in who was going to cut her taxes the most.
Yeah, this is what happens after 40 years of both-siderism. You get people like this who they're on autopilot. Anything Trump does, anything a Republican does, if you push back against it, it's both sides.
Yeah.
This is from NBC. Quote, CNN bans conservative guest for telling Muslim journalist, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. Ryan Gerdusky clashed with British-American journalist Mehdi Hassan on Monday night, unquote. What NBC does not mention is that cable TV books guests like Gerdusky precisely because they hope something will blow up. They're hoping for an exciting train wreck that everyone will be talking about the next day.
Yeah, and Gerdusky apologized on the air right after he said it. So I apologized. It's okay then.
Mm-hmm. And the host said, look, this went too far. We took him off the air, but we hope he's coming back. We're planning on having him back because, we're committed to blah, 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 both sides.
And then they banned him.
Yeah.
Which means he's probably going to have his own show on Newsmax next spring.
Sure. Why wouldn't he? Make $1 million.
From MSNBC, Andrea Mitchell is giving up her daily show, although she'll still be with the network.
Yeah. They're going to give her a little office that has a window, and she'll stare out of it all day long. Finally, Steve Bannon was released from prison today and went straight back to the microphone to grift idiots for cash. Meanwhile...
And you have some local news, Driftglass.
I do. In local news, Dateline, our little town of Springfield, Illinois. Thanks to Sangamon County Board member Mark Ayers, who I know, and he's a very nice guy. You should vote for him. Thank him for posting 2 door hangers side by side. These are political literature that are showing up all over Springfield area in advance of the election next week, and we'd like to note a glaring difference between them. One of them shows outstanding Democratic candidates for whom all right-thinking people should vote, and is proud to show a picture of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the top of our ticket, and proud of the diversity of our party.
Yeah, there's a picture of all the leading candidates, including Nikki Budzinski and Mark Ayers and some of the other county-wide, but all Democrats.
Democrats.
They're all lined up as a team, right?
And there's a QR code, and how do you vote, and how do you vote early? It's all very efficient, and it's all very well planned, and it's all very diverse. And right there at the top of the ticket is Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, of whom we are terribly proud. The other one, the Republican, makes no mention whatsoever of who's leading the Republican Party ticket. Oops, probably just a glitch at the printer. They probably just forgot to print on the printer, on the literature, who the Republican candidate for president is. Yeah, the fascist who won the Sangamon County Republican primary just 7 months ago with 76.5% of the vote, that guy. The same fascist they proudly nominated at their convention just 3 months ago. The same fascist who just this weekend staged the first fascist rally at Madison Square Garden in 1938. I also want to note that tomorrow,
birthday.
Tomorrow, my birthday, I will be on the Brad Show with Brad Friedman and Desi Doyen and Digby. Since it's my birthday, if I show up drunk and sweary, well, just expect miracles, people. Just expect miracles.
I'll sober up real fast for the radio.
I will.
Feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. I've had 9 of them today. Can you tell?
Yes.
This is not. Yeah, I'm a little bit wired. I've been doing an awful lot of talking today, an awful lot of podcasting, an awful lot of riffing. So, but remember, this is not charity. This is our job, and we really do enjoy doing it. So if you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/ProLeftPod. Please also share our show on social media. And every time we show up on another show, share that too. And if you love this podcast, get someone else to listen to it. We really appreciate it, and it helps our algorithm, and it helps our bottom line.
And thank you for doing that. By the way, next Tuesday is Election Day.
It is.
And we will not be doing a show because we are going to be on the Hal Sparks show. And he's doing, I guess, a election night extravaganza.
24 hours. 24 hours straight. Yep.
Something like that.
Yep.
Anyway, he is having all kinds of friends of his and stellar personalities, including us. We were very honored. Mm-hmm. So we will be on YouTube Live on the Hal Sparks show. Watch Hal Sparks at his YouTube channel for details.
Right.
And we're going to be on fairly early in the proceedings that we've been told. So check us out. We'll let you know more as we know more. And we're excited about that. So that's our plans for Election Day.
And just so you know, if you remember the Jerry Lewis telethon, we're basically the people who come on at 2 a.m. but we're just happy to be there. You know,
Yeah.
we're senior wences. We're coming on at 2 a.m. We're doing our bit, and we realize we're going to be in good company. So please check us out and check out the whole house show or as much of it as you can.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are very excited to hear about our fake sponsors' freshly poured new product line of scientifically engineered kitty litter. Hit it, Blue Gal.
Freshly scooped, freshly scooped. I'll only poop on freshly scooped.
Hell yeah. You'll be hearing that song a lot in the future. Promise you.
No, you won't.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying and the fellow and the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.